All right, Burnsville Psych, we're back today talking about operant conditioning. When we talk about operant conditioning, instead of talking about learning that occurs through association, which is what we talked about with classical conditioning, now we're talking about learning that occurs through consequences. Think about operant conditioning is that once we start talking about this, you will instantly recognize it because the majority of our society works using operant conditioning. If you've ever trained a dog, you know what operant conditioning is. If you are a student or a parent, you have seen operant conditioning in your daily life regularly. Operant conditioning comes from a guy named B.F. Skinner. He was probably the best known psychologist in terms of developing some of these ideas. Um, so we will talk more about him in class. But he is kind of the name that connects to this kind of learning, like Pavlov would be the name that we connect generally with classical conditioning. Skinner does a lot of his research using rats and animals, and this wing of psychology is very different from that group that we were talking about in the last unit, the psychoanalytic types or the psychodynamic types. And basically, this is a response to all that Freudian stuff. And Skinner says, wait a second, how do you know where the unconscious mind is? And how do you know about repression? And how do you know about all these other things that Freud was talking about? There's no way to know. So he says, the only thing that we can know for sure is what we can observe. So operant conditioning is one of the key ideas in terms of behavioral psychology. And basically, the psychologists here are looking at behavior and studying what they can see. The easiest behavior to study would be that of our friends in the animal kingdom because we can buy a bunch of them and put them in mazes and watch and see what they do. So operant conditioning is going to be a little bit different from what we saw in classical conditioning. Again, learning that happens using consequences. So what are the consequences? First consequence we're talking about is called positive reinforcement. The word that we all would use for this is reward. And again, this will look familiar because a good chunk of our society is based off of the use of rewards. If we want to define positive reinforcement, we will use this definition: adding something pleasant in order to strengthen a behavior. If we go down here to this box, here's my shorthand: adding something pleasant in order to strengthen a behavior. And this will make sense when we get to the other two versions of uh, operant condition that we talk about today. So, best example, training a dog. The dog does what you want. You give it the little biscuit, and that's how we train dogs to sit or stay or do tricks or whatever we're doing. If you have ever gotten money for bringing home certain grades, for every A I get $5, and for every B I get $3, something like that kind of a system, that would be positive reinforcement. We're adding something pleasant in order to strengthen the behavior. When we were potty training our children, one of the things that we did was to try to make sure we used positive reinforcement when they successfully used the potty. We wanted to make sure that they knew this is a behavior we want to strengthen. Now, clearly, that's not the language we would have used, but sometimes kids will get little treats. Other times, people will. There actually was a great product on the market. It was a toilet seat, and it was like one of the little training potties. So when the child would deposit something in the bowl of the potty, a song would play. So it had some kind of sensor in it that was rigged up so that you put something liquid in there or whatever, and the music would play, and the kids would think it was delightful that, hey, there's a great song playing. Something pleasant to strengthen a behavior. Now, if you notice, we have two things listed here: money and candy. Both of these are tangible rewards. They're something you can hold in your hand. But the something pleasant doesn't have to be something tangible. It could be even a compliment or some kind of some other kind of response, right? Some other kind of reward. It doesn't have to be something you could hold or spend. So that's positive reinforcement, the first of the three kinds of operant conditioning that we're talking about. So the first consequence, adding something pleasant to strengthen a behavior. Second consequence is called negative reinforcement. And the reason it's negative reinforcement is that we're still trying to strengthen a behavior, notice that, but the way we're going about that is kind of backwards. So instead of adding something pleasant with negative reinforcement, we are removing something that is unpleasant. But notice down here, our goal is still to strengthen that behavior. We want behavior to get stronger. The way we're going about it is by taking away something that the person doesn't like. So a great example here is if I take care of my teeth and floss and brush and do all the work I'm supposed to do, then I don't have to go to the dentist as much, or I don't have to get my teeth drilled. If I wear my seatbelt, that annoying beeping sound turns off once I plug my belt in. Negative reinforcement, the goal is to strengthen a behavior. The trick here is how you go about that strengthening. The third kind of reinforcement or consequence that we're talking about is called punishment. And punishment is different from the two kinds of reinforcement in that we are not trying to strengthen a behavior, we're trying to stop a behavior. So how do we stop the behavior? We add something that is unpleasant to stop the behavior. So if we go down to our handy code down here, we have a different look. What this says then is, I think we can all relate to examples of punishment. If you get grounded, we're adding something unpleasant, adding the fact that you're stuck in your room in order to try to stop you from getting bad grades. Yelling at a child, chastising a child when they do something wrong, we're adding something unpleasant, the loud voice or the yelling, to try to stop a behavior. Any kind of penalty that is added to stop a behavior, a speeding ticket would be punishment. I think instinctively we know what punishment looks like because we, again, live in this society. When we talk about the three kinds of operant conditioning, we have seen these in operation in our society. So the question then becomes, which of these is most effective, and what are some of the things that come along with using operant conditioning? And that's the subject of the discussion in class tomorrow. That's all I have for you. Thanks for watching. Good night. Good night.